Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Geneva, good evening. Glad to have you here for the Leading in a VUCA World webinar hosted by the P&G Alumni Cincinnati chapter. This has been, I think, the biggest response we've ever had to an event, this particular topic. Really excited to have this crew on board to cover this event. I think you're going to love it. Just a couple of quick announcements about the chapter. My name is Stuart Schaefer. I'm the chair of the Cincinnati chapter. We are hosting the event, and our sponsor is Johnson Investments, which you've seen in the announcements. It will be in the link that we send. Mike Stannis is our treasurer. If you want to reach out to him at any time, would love it. They make this possible. I also wanted to show you something because word got out that we're doing a VUCA event. And not only did it get a lot of interest from the members, but we had one very special alumni. Let's see. He reached out to me yesterday and sent me a website he's working on. The website's called Leading to Win. It should be on your screen right now. And the person who put this website together said, well, it's kind of in a beta state. I'm changing it every week. It's not really ready for prime time, but given it's the alumni, I really want to share. Here's one of the articles in the website, and this is A.G. Lafley's website. So I would encourage you. So these articles are phenomenal, and he may be changing week to week, but we're getting to see A.G.'s work before most people in the world. So, and I've sent the link out to you guys. I'll send it again when we do the wrap up at the end. And I hope you enjoy it. Also, at the end of this, a quick survey is going to pop up in your browser. Please take 5 minutes or 2 minutes to fill it out so we know what suggestions you have. And without further ado, I am going to hand this over to Pete Blackshaw. Pete's the CEO of Centrifuge, which is our local accelerator. The connections with the company and with all the local startups is phenomenal. I've known Pete for a long time. When he did his left P&G to do his startup, Planet Feedback, I think in the 90s or something, and then went on to become the digital head for Nestle, and then back here to help us drive our local ecosystem. And Pete has been beating that VUCA drum a lot here in town. So I'm really excited. He's our moderator for this. And I am going to jump offline and turn it over to Pete to introduce the panelists and take it from here. So thanks, everybody. Pete, it's all yours.
Excellent. Thanks, Stuart. And thanks to everybody who's dialing in. This is definitely one of my favorite topics. I think the last time I did it, it was actually an internal P&G Signal event. I think we had something like 300 employees sign up. So it's such a wonderfully timely topic, and we're really enthused about today's session and about this upcoming, P&G Alumni Network Virtual Speaker Series. When the pandemic made it possible to gather for the kinds of in-person events that the Cincinnati chapter has been known for, we clearly kind of pivoted and created a new virtual concept. And I think it's working really, really well. And your feedback, to Stuart's point, it's going to be really important. Now, traditionally, alumni events have featured current P&G executives, but with this new series, we're featuring alumni themselves, which is absolutely energizing, as I think you'll get a feel for in a moment. We held our first event back in spring of 2020 and focused on how alums were stepping up to help with the health crisis, creating radically simple ventilation, making safety shields for frontline workers and responders, and producing sanitizer in Doug Hall's, believe it or not, bourbon distillery, and even turning Union Hall, the company that the facility that our company owns, into a 3D, mask factory. It was very energizing, and I think it really brought to life the fantastic entrepreneurial spirit of P&G alums, always kind of facing those bold challenges, and it's in that same spirit that we're going to talk about today. We've got another session around, we did another session on design thinking and helping leaders make creative choices. And today we're going to be sharing examples and insights from alums who've pivoted in periods of extreme disruption, what some call the VUCA world: volatile, uncertain, chaotic, and ambiguous. And there is no term, no word that I think is more important than VUCA. We don't really have a choice. This isn't just about people that are, getting into future thinking. This is here today. And, I think this is going to be a really spirited conversation. So we have four outstanding panelists that have joined us today. Bill Brass, who's the Chief Marketing Officer and Executive General Manager of Jared Stores, Signet Jewelers. And Bill and I go back to early days. It's good to see you again. Kevin Clayton, Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement from the Cleveland Cavaliers, doing amazing work, and they've even got some cool news as we speak. One of my favorite people on planet Earth, Tia Rochelle, who's the CEO of Johnny Spot, Concierge, and the Tia Rochelle Agency. We're kindred spirits on the whole area of thinking and acting like a concierge, which I think is so critically important in today's environment where you're just not sure what kind of question or need you're going to get from the customer. And then another favorite of mine, Holly O'Driscoll, who many of you know, is kind of a legend, founder and CEO of Ampersand Innovation, LLC, works very closely with other friends of mine like Greg Eisenhower, but we just got a great panel. So I'll each ask of you to say a little bit about yourselves, and then to kick us off with your thoughts about this opening question. How have you personally pivoted in the last several months, and what have you learned from the experience? Bill, why don't you jump in first, and then I'll ask Kevin, Tia, and Holly to follow on.
Sure. Thanks so much, Pete. Great to be here with you all today. Definitely good to be back with people that share a P&G background. I spent nearly 30 years at P&G. I started in product supply, moved on to marketing primarily in skincare, and then spent a little over 11 years in general management roles, including Western Europe oral care, including prestige beauty, and then North America skin and personal care, and global APDO. Love my time at P&G, and subsequently have spent about 2.5 years now at Signet Jewelers. I play 3 roles here. As Pete said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the company. I'm the Executive General Manager for Jared, and I've also recently taken over all of our services business. We could talk a lot about, the things I've learned since I left P&G, but we want to focus on, some of the things that have really, happened in the last 12 months as we've dealt with, obviously, a lot of disruption. And, I guess the story I would lead with and some of the lessons I learned really stem from the day, last March 18th, when we closed all of our stores. And, suddenly 90% of our sales base was gone. And we were contending with a situation that obviously nobody knew what was going to happen, but we knew what happened the last time we were in a financial crisis back in, 2008. It took 3 years for the jewelry business to recover. And we anticipated that we need to be prepared for this to be a prolonged, protracted, fundamental threat to the existence of the company. And so we got really focused on 2 things: selling more and spending less. And I'm going to talk about the selling more piece of this story at least first, which, really came down to a question of how are you going to sell if you don't have stores open? And we, fortunately had an e-commerce business. E-commerce development, perhaps not surprisingly, has lagged in jewelry versus other categories, given the high transaction value and the role of trust in selling in this category. So we scrambled, right? And we worked to quickly set up a capability to sell virtually. And even though we had furloughed our entire store staff under the circumstances, we kept on our store general managers, and we set them up within 24 hours of shutting our stores down with the ability to sell from home off their iPads. And we developed, capability and functionality on our websites to be able to click now to talk to a live person, to really try to, in the best way we could under the circumstances, substitute for that high touch, high quality connection that our jewelry consultants make with our customers. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but we got out of the gate with that capability and saw it frankly explode. I mean, it was never a substitute for our overall, the 90% of sales that we lost, but it was a good, it helped compensate a lot in those days. And we expanded the capability across the company. And lo and behold, when we opened our stores back up, what we saw our e-commerce penetration essentially double in that period. And once we started back up, we saw that our e-commerce penetration stayed at that level, which I think is a real testament to, kind of the step we took to build functionality that was not just helpful and necessary in the moment, but sustainable. And I'd call out 4 lessons that I learned from that experience. One is, having a foundation of being what we call at Signet customer first, what at P&G we called consumer is boss, is a critical foundation for being agile and successful in a VUCA world. Because even if you don't know exactly how fast the puck is moving, you have a sense of where it's going. You have a sense of where you need to orient and be ready and poised to act when the VUCA world hits. The second thing I would say is it's so critical to have an ongoing commitment to innovation and testing and piloting things. What I didn't tell you, but one of the reasons we were able to act in 48 hours is we had actually piloted the technology I told you about 4 months earlier, before COVID ever hit, the radar screen. And it was because we knew that having a better digital experience would somehow involve our jewelry consultants. As it happened, that pilot was not a success when we first launched it, in part because it was a lower priority for our store staff. But when they only had one way to access new sales, they adopted it, embraced it, and even today now, it is a core part of their work. Third thing I would say, move fast, right? And move fast with the interest of, being good enough is better than being perfect, right? What the capability that we launched has evolved considerably over the, in the time since we first launched it. And if we had waited to make it better and, it could be just this much better, we would have missed, weeks. And, we were able to do in, what it would have normally taken probably months, like I said, in hours and days. The last thing I would say is when the other big learning from this is focus matters, right? When you're in a really tough situation, I mean, we were focused, like I said, on 2 things, right? Selling more virtually and through our websites, and saving cash. Those are the only 2 things that matter. The organization flattened, it narrowed, and everybody was focused on the same things. So I would just call out those as that's my little anecdote to get us started. Those are the 4 things that stand out to me most in terms of what I learned, and maybe you guys can find an opportunity to reapply in your situation.
Fantastic. That's love that. It reminds me, there's an article in the Cincinnati Business Courier this weekend, cover story about Rodney McMullen, the CEO of Kroger, and he was quoted saying that they got 5 years worth of experience in 5 weeks. And there is like that trial by fire, and it's true. I've actually, just seen how quickly they've toggled into e-commerce and, grocery as a service, things that you probably would have put on the 5 to 10 year plan. Suddenly they're here. They've actually moved from a top 10 to a top 5 e-commerce player. It's just, but it takes that disruption. I think those are great examples, Phil. Let's move over to Tia, what do you think?
Hello, thank you. So I don't have as many years with P&G as probably some of the amazing guests that we have here, but my time with them was very significant. And I had the pleasure and privilege of starting my career in P&G with the legal department. And I worked in mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures. And I worked with and all the big deals and the big sales. And but I also had a knack for, and Pete, you'll probably be shocked by this. I had a knack for communication and just for like being around people and supporting and providing this experience. And I had some people really champion me and encourage me to move into, at that time, what was external relations. And so that really was the pivotal point in my P&G career. I moved over from legal. I was in legal for about 2 years, moved over to external relations, which then turned into communications, and just had a phenomenal ride several years within that role. I had the privilege and the honor of serving under I would say some of the most amazing leaders that I have ever come in contact with in my life. I served under David Taylor before he was the CEO. I served under Shailesh Jurikar. I served under Lee Banzel and Greg Eisenhower. And these people really helped to create who I am today. They helped me to, really understand the business and really to understand that mindset. I got a lot of my concierge mindset from them. So, I had a great time. I was there for about 7 years, and I took some time off to be a mom. I have 4 little ones at home. And when it was time for me to come back into the world, I went and I joined GE. But now where I am today, I am the founder and CEO of Johnny Spot Concierge. And Johnny Spot, what we do is we are a task force team that provides administrative support services. We provide a value of the administrative services that either you as an individual entrepreneur or a small business, medium-sized or large corporation may need. And so, with this pandemic, I would have to say that the biggest learnings that I had was we actually launched on January the 4th, 2020. So we literally had a phenomenal, huge, beautiful launch celebration. It was so much potential. We launched as a concierge and a lifestyle management service. We launched with the intention of providing lifestyle management to everyday individuals, to the busy professionals, to the people like myself, like Bill, like Kevin, Holly, Pete. We launched to be able to provide a service, both personal lifestyle management and business concierge. Within a month and a half later of us literally, think about that little toddler when they stand up on their 2 feet and they try to take those steps. And Holly, I see you laughing because we're both those moms. They try to take those steps. And the moment we were ready to launch, we had all this momentum. I have these amazing business partners. We had support around the city and we were ready to go. We did everything right because we're all corporate folks. And, so we dotted all our I's and crossed all our T's. And then the pandemic hit. And it completely knocked us on our butt. And, it was an awakening. It was something that I don't think anyone planned for. I don't care what your title is, how long you've been on your job, what you do. I don't think anyone anticipated the true effect that this pandemic was going to have. And, we just had to adjust. And so what we thought Johnny Spot was going to do was not what it does. And we'll probably talk a little bit more about that. But a couple of takeaways that I had from the pandemic and from the impact of this VUCA environment, I had to really, first of all, focus and really focus on the things that I have control over. If anyone else out here is a mom and you wear a million hats and you're a teen mom, you're on the parent board, you're doing this, we do everything. But in this particular situation, I couldn't control this. And I found myself really struggling with that. And especially as a small business owner. But once I really learned how to focus, really hone in on my circle of influence and what I could control, then I was able to really understand where I could have the greatest impact in my business. I also, realized that I had to, although we had this amazing business, we were now faced with this incredible challenge in front of us. I had to have the determination to not allow this thing to fail. And I had to reach in and really dig deep and put my whole self into it. And so, some of that, I think you have to have a certain level of grit. You have to, it would have been easy for me to say, hey, we're going to leave it. We just launched, no one will know. But I didn't. And I made sure that this business was going to be impactful in some type of way. So I had to find that need. And
Fantastic.
just because the need was not here, we found where the need was.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Kevin, tell us about a little bit about your background and how you personally pivoted and some of the key takeaways.
Yeah, so thank you. And man, it is so good to be back amongst P&G folks. I actually started 2 days after I graduated from college, and I came up through the food division. And I would say the food division because back then it was the case food division with Crisco and Jif and Duncan Hines and all of those. Moved into the paper sector at that point, and I had a decade with P&G. And that 10 years provided the grounding for everything that I've done in my career since. I actually was part of the coming together of the test market in Jacksonville when we decided, hey, let's focus on this whole kind of customer team approach. And that was really born out of the Jacksonville study. When I left P&G, I left because I felt that I wanted to go out to be an entrepreneur. And I had an opportunity to take 10 years of these great experiences in the sales and marketing and branding side to kind of put up my own shingle. And I found that I've been going in and out of corporate from consulting to holding jobs with very prominent brands because I've used the industry to really guide my career. And let me tell you what that looks like. I've had opportunity to work in sports. I worked in apparel with Russell Athletic and Bike Athletic, and we were on the side of really from a branding standpoint and from a sponsorship standpoint. We were working with the leagues, multiple leagues. And then I actually went to work in healthcare for a while with American Cancer and had an opportunity to hold a similar position from a D&I perspective, saving lives in the Cancer Association. Then went back, opened up my own consulting firm again, and I found myself in Charleston, South Carolina, in the middle of when Mother Emanuel Church was those killings happened when the parishioners were there at Bible study. The following week, I was in Columbia, South Carolina, in a march and protest and conversation with the governor of South Carolina as the Confederate flag was coming down. Made it to Cincinnati, actually, and was back in healthcare, Bon Secours Mercy Health, and had an opportunity to do this work. And now I am with the Cavaliers. And when people hear that I'm with the Cavaliers, they think about the basketball team. It's one of 130 companies that Dan Gilbert and team own, of which, if you think about Rocket Mortgage, Quicken Loans, and what have you, but I have 3 or 4 of the sports properties. We have a hockey team, an esports team, and Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Pre-COVID, we had over 220 events. So when I think about a VUCA world, the NBA played a major part in society because it wasn't until March 12th of 2020 when we shut down playing basketball that the whole world at that point, or at least in this country, said, wait a minute, this is very serious. And you saw league after league, and then you saw sports, you saw entertainment, you saw a domino effect of that. So when I think about the impact of kind of what happened in 2020 as it related to COVID and that impact, to me, there's two epidemics, or not epidemics. There were two pandemics. Excuse me. Those pandemics were COVID and racism, both of which the NBA played a major role in, because we stopped playing games right after the George Floyd killing. We stopped playing games right after COVID. So it wasn't to stop playing games. It was because we realized that we were in a VUCA world. Think about an organization, the reason I gave you the context, 220 events out of 365 days in our building that range from basketball to hockey to Disney on Ice to concerts, all came to a stop. So we had to pivot. We had to wait on policy. We had to wait on decisions. So when I think about the acronym of VUCA, the one to me that had the most impact was ambiguity. Everything was so vague. We were making decisions on a Monday based on current information that we got from the CDC, that on Wednesday, we found more information to unvalidate that or to change it, that we're now shifting our complete business model. So our ability to be agile, our ability to be able to say, look, we have to be able to put a plan in place that is versatile enough that can change. When I think about the impact from the racism and what happened with George Floyd, we also had to make a decision. And that decision was based on our core values. And that was, do we stand up for social justice and humanity for everybody? Or do we just kind of take a look at our business plan? And this is a key point, and I'll kind of wrap up, is that if we take a stand as a league and as a team, our shareholders, and I say shareholders from the standpoint of our ticket holders and our sponsors, what if it flies in the face of what they value? And it did. We got phone calls from our sponsors and our partners saying, wait a minute, we don't want you to put Black Lives Matter on a court. But it was core to our values. It was core to our belief. 86% of our players are African American. How could we not take a stand? So with that, the two things that I would like to leave you with, and I appreciate Tia and Bill and kind of you laying the foundation. One is, in a VUCA environment, your core values have to drive your decisions. If your core values change because there's complexity, because there's now an impact in the environment, then what do you really stand for? Secondly, because of the work that I've done from a diversity standpoint and what I learned from the days of P&G, diversity drives innovation. There were more people that came to the table to offer ways in which we could actually move our business forward that we've never ever had to the table before. But we were in a situation where all lives matter, all decisions matter in our organization, and we valued the innovation that different approaches brought us. Thank you.
Holly, you.
Yeah, Pete, you're cutting out a little bit.
You have the floor.
All
Man.
right. Thanks so much. Wow. What a hard act to follow. It's really great to follow Kevin, because I think so much of my time, both at P&G and then post, is so linked to innovation. So I joined in corporate engineering right out of undergrad, and I was doing quite a bit of scale-up work and microemulsion technology, which always makes me laugh when I say that, because it's such a far departure from what I do now. But I spent about 6 years in corporate engineering doing scale-up work around the world. So got to visit many plants in many different parts of the world, which was really an exciting learning opportunity to see what it looks and feels like to move the case out the door. And I think that end-to-end experience that certainly I garnered from all of my days at P&G has continued to serve me well. But when I was in engineering, I went back and got an MBA in the evening. And then when I finished, moved over to the commercial side of the business to really be the bridge between the technical organization and the emerging design community that ultimately was established as a function and now part of the brand organization at P&G. And so I was spending a lot of time really helping to educate the technical community on the importance of a holistic consumer experience and how do we design with that in mind. And then round about 2007, design thinking came to P&G, thanks to A.G. Lafley and Roger Martin's efforts in bringing that to life, and Claudia Kochka, I'm sure a lot of names that you're familiar with. And that changed my life. So I had a baby in 2007 and got trained in 2008 as soon as I came back. And wow, when you think about the core of human-centeredness, right? That is the essence of design thinking, solving with people first, and really with people, not for people. My word choice was intentional, right? With people, not for them, bringing them into the mix and using that sense of connection and empathy to carry that forward. So I really loved my design thinking role at P&G, traveling the world doing workshops and facilitation and training others. And so a lot of great experiences there. And then around about, 2016, something really interesting happened. Some of my former internal clients, because I was still in a corporate role, they were leaving the organization and they would call and say, hey, can you come and do with my new team what you did with my old team? And I'm like, I don't know, right? I've got a full-time job and 4 kids and a husband and a dog, and I don't know how to think about this. And so they kept calling. And one in particular called every month for 6 months. And she said, hold on a second, I really need you to come and do this, and I'm running out of time. And the next day, Rutgers University called and said, we're starting up a design thinking exec ed program. We'd love for you to be a part of it. What do you think? And I thought, wow, these are 2 signs from the universe that I need to pause and really step back and consider what else is out there, right? And so I had a couple of conversations, ultimately got the support of the organization to found my business while I was still there. And so that allowed me to go and do non-compete consulting, take vacation to do it, because the design thinking approach was not intellectual property of the company. So really allowing that space for prototyping, which is one of the principles that I spent a lot of time talking with others about, right? Prototyping my own business while I was still kind of inside the organization. And so the agreement was take vacation, don't work with a competitor, and kind of you're good on that front, right? So when I ran out of vacation, September of 2018, I quit and started immediately. That was on a Thursday. I got on a plane on Sunday to do more client work and kind of went from there. So that's the backstory. But what I'm so grateful for in that experience is that openness. We talk a lot about mindset and design thinking, and having this mindset of what's possible and what do I do with what I have and how do I really make the most of that, rather than saying, oh, I'm not sure. And, why wouldn't I put that out there, and looking for those barriers instead. So instead, kind of looking in those possibility spaces. So that was really important to be able to continue to bring that forward. And when I fast forward a bit to 2020, 2019, I had 150,000 air miles that year and had expected to be well on my way to doing the same in 2020. And my last flight was February 19th, 2020. And that was the last time I had a business trip still, right? So that's been really interesting. I had a really full March, April, May planned, and all of the March activities, the events that were booked, which were all in person, by the way, right? I was running in-person workshops for anywhere from 30 to 80 people, and doing the facilitation and doing keynotes around the world and doing trainings, and all of that magic happened in person until it didn't. And so clients said, oh, it'll be okay in a month. We'll punt everything until May, right? Well, that didn't happen either. And when it became clear that wasn't going to be the path forward, we put our heads together and said, oh, I think it's time to kind of eat our own dog food and prototype. And if you're willing to go after and play with this good enough beats perfect, let's go. And so we shifted everything to Zoom. And what that requires is a really different skill set and mindset, right? The multisensorial things that I would bring to an in-person program, like music and video, suddenly became a little more cumbersome. But when you think about the human-centeredness, still so needed, because Zoom fatigue is real, right? We've probably all been on a full day session sometime in the past year. It's exhausting. I remember my first full day session on Zoom last June. I could barely walk up the steps when I was finished, right? Completely different level of energy. And so eating our own dog food and pausing to say, wow, I'm really going to put on this prototyping hat and jump in with both feet and figure it out is really important. The second thing I think matters a lot is the awareness that inspiration can come from anywhere. And so what do I mean by that? I learned a lot of tools from my then first grade daughter's Spanish teacher, because I was home with 4 kids, watching them figure out how to do school online. And that's where I learned tools that I continue to use today, right? And so that openness to, hey, you might read it, you might see it on a blog, you might find it from your daughter's first grade Spanish teacher, right? All of these are opportunities for us to learn and really embrace that idea of inspiration can come from anywhere. And so, you know, a year ago, even in this moment, I would have said, there's no way you can do this work online. And now I'm doing it every single week. And people are happier now, I would say, than they were then. And one of the things that I've discovered along the way is that the remote engagements allow for even more diversity of thought and perspective to come to life, because you don't have to be on in this moment, right? If we're doing a multiple day session, last week I had a 4-day workshop and told people, wow, you know, if your best idea that you've had in the past 30 years isn't going to come in the next 30 minutes, which is, oh, by the way, what we asked people to do before, right. If you're most creative from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., you dial onto the platform then, or you take some good notes and you get up and you post the stuff on our collaborative space and you go from there. So the magic and the unintended silver lining of this journey is really, really unlocking what does it mean to discover our potential, to really leverage the diversity of perspective, the diversity of thought, and prototype the heck out of what that's looking like.
Oh, I love this. Stuart, I hope you're recording this. We're gonna have to share this gold with others. I mean, I'm hearing a couple things, that are just screaming at me. One key theme is just be an entrepreneur, no matter where you are, and everyone's kind of exercising that inner entrepreneur that, I think it's an innate skill, but you almost need the external conditions to kind of bring it out. The other part that I heard across all of you is, there are these foundations. It's almost like in the form of an insurance that puts us in a much better position as the waves of change kind of crash into us. Kevin talked about core values. Bill talked about the customer discipline. Tia thinking and acting like a concierge. Holly, I think a lot of what you're saying about the human-centered design principles kind of get you through that. I think that's really powerful. And I wanted to ask you, Bill, I actually had a formal question for you, Bill, but I actually want to give you a chance to react to anything that you've heard here, because I think these comments so far have kind of hit the right chord. What resonates? What would you build upon? Anything you disagree with?
No, I think that maybe that everything you said resonates, Pete, and I think well captured in terms of some of the key takeaways. I guess the one that resonates particularly strong is this notion of almost like the insurance policy that you get by being very disciplined, focused on the customer, having an innovation program that you can draw from and pull things off the shelf, even if they haven't been fully utilized. I loved Kevin's story about values. We actually found ourselves in a similar situation where, we had been doing a lot of values work and corporate purpose work leading up to the whole crisis. And when the George Floyd situation hit, we sat down as a leadership team and said, what are we going to do? And what in the past might have been a very protracted conversation, because we had that common alignment and view as to what our corporate purpose was, it took us a half hour to decide what we were going to do in direct support of organizations like the NAACP. When the whole Facebook boycott hit, it took us that much time to decide what side of the fence we were on and what we were going to do. So it's, the analogy I have, I think your insurance policy is great, but it's like what's the keel of the boat, right?
Exactly.
What are those elements that are going to keep you on course, even in the choppiest of waters? What are some of those things that underpin who you are, how you think, what you do? And as long as you're clear on those, take advantage of times that aren't so VUCA to put those in place to help you navigate through the times that are.
It's so interesting for this group, all of us in attendance, the 200 plus attendees. I think the emphasis on values is probably the most important thing we all internalize from our time at P&G. I think almost everyone would say that, and I think that is providing that storm insurance. Who else wants to jump in? Kevin, any reactions to the discussion so far?
The famous words, Kevin, you're on mute. So yeah, so no, I'm really fascinated of the common linkages that all of us have in how we've addressed this. And what I mentioned around the core values, and Bill, that's really what you talked about. It took you 30 minutes as a leadership team to go back to something that you already had in place to make the right decision. And one of the things that for me, that here's a word that I'd never ever want to hear, and that is unprecedented. It's unprecedented. All of us, it's not unprecedented, it's just a different business challenge. And all of us have responded to these times. And if you aren't prepared to leverage your innovation, to leverage your organization, and Holly, what you said, I totally agree. For us, we didn't use technology in kind of hand-to-hand combat. We were in a building with 500 team members. We were always interacting face-to-face. Technology allowed so many different people to now contribute ideas. And when you talk about understanding and getting to know your team better, which is a part of how you drive innovation when you know the organization, we weren't seeing the background in people's homes. We weren't seeing the kids and the pets. We felt closer because of the moment that we all were rallying around, I got to come to you as I am because these are the circumstances, and people were free to now express themselves in ways that I think our corporate structure pre-COVID, pre-lockdown was stymied. I mean, it was keeping it away. It blocked it out.
Such a great point. Tia, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I love the stories and the input from my other fellow amazing panelists. But I know for myself as a small business, it was a little bit different for the way that we had to really take a look at things. I wish I had that big team, right, to come back to, and I wish that I had, I had been able to go into, working in communications at Procter & Gamble, when there was a crisis, we had, the crisis management training. And so we gathered the whole team and figured out what needed to be done. But we didn't have that, as a small business. And for us, I remember it was one particular day I was really struggling with the whole pandemic. And just struggling with everything. It seemed like somebody just switched a light switch and the world turned off. It was really eerie to me. And I just said, I said, Tia, wait a minute, what can you really do, right? So that comes back into really understanding your circle of influence and the way that you can impact the people. And so what I did, I went back to the foundation of who Tia is. And who Tia is, which is a large part of the concierge mentality, Pete, is Tia loves to serve, right? I was an executive assistant at Procter & Gamble. I love to serve people. I was an executive assistant before I moved into a leadership role at GE. I love to serve. And so in that moment, I didn't have the time, or I didn't have really the resources or time to be able to come back and say, hey, let's all gather, let's figure out, because my partners they still have their corporate jobs. We had to, and I wouldn't even say fail. We didn't really fail, but when you think about it, you got to fail fast and pivot, right? You have to make a quick decision and move. And so we had to go to that foundation of serving, which is what our company was founded upon. And we just found little ways to serve the people. We fed people, we had to be very intentional about it. What can we do? Since we can't go into their homes and serve them the way that we wanted to, how can we serve them? So what we did was we provided hot meals. We didn't want to just provide food boxes because I'm a mother and I have children. So when I come home, give me food, I'm going to be grateful. But I don't want to then come home from work in the middle of a pandemic, mask on my face every day, and then have to sit down and now prepare food and deal with the children. I wanted these families to go home and go straight to the table with their children. And so we were able to partner with our local Krogers, or my neighborhood Krogers, the Hartwell Kroger store, and we were able to provide hot meals to families. We then said, you know what else can we do? You know, and it's not big things, right? We're a small company. We're a homegrown local small business. I will be a $1 billion business, a $1 billion brand one day. Bill and Kevin, you guys are going to see me, and Holly, we're going to get together, girl. I'm going to speak that we will be that one day very soon, but we weren't at that time. And so we had to just be very creative about ways that we can really have the greatest impact. And so another thing that we did was we decided, what can we do outside? Okay, we fed families. Now, can we just honor people? Can we just tell them thank you? And we started the love campaign. And we had these small little digital love cards, thank you cards. And we said, in the world of a pandemic, when you can't, you know, physically, I had been traveling around the world for 2 years in my last role, all over, you know, the US and abroad. But at that moment, no one could really reach out and touch anyone. So in the middle of a pandemic, how far can your love really go? And so we just had encouraged people to send love notes to people, to share it on Facebook for the first responders, to send it to your doctor, to send it to the teachers, because I don't know about anybody else, but Holly, I'm sure my teachers are so in my village with my children. Yeah. So I have been loving on them, because now I finally understand what they're going through, having to run a business and be a 3rd grade mom, a 7th grade mom, a 9th grade mom, and a 11th grade mom at home. So we began to just want to love on people and to serve them. And because it was so easy to do that, because that was the foundation on which we were founded. So that's my 2 cents.
Fantastic. By the way, after listening to Kevin, I was feeling a little phony with my virtual background. So I have my real space in the background, including my 100-year-old ivory soapbox. Real thing. I wanted to, Holly, I wanted to ask you, one of the questions came up, you know, from Noel Williams about, you know, how do you discern which aspects of our activity need to remain fixed and which need to be fluid, which need to be fluid is our artistry of leadership. How do you think about the balance of those two?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a really important one. And once we're clear on our leadership philosophy, so, you know, now I'm doing quite a bit of work with HR leaders in addition to brand and innovation leaders, because this essence of human-centeredness is now so top of mind for leadership as well. And I think that core leadership philosophy, what do you want to stand for in the hearts and minds of the people that you're leading, is so, so important. And I read something on LinkedIn, and I'm going to butcher it, but this was the essence of, in the past, our work was about what we could physically do, right? Our bodies, what could we lift? How do we do things? And now our work is about knowledge and, you know, focused on our brains. And in the future, our work is going to be about our heart. And when I think about this space for leadership and innovation and inclusion and bringing the love that Tia talked about to the world, right? Isn't that why we do what we do, right? To make a difference, to bring meaning to places. And when I think about the possibilities of, wow, what's fixed? You and your values and what you stand for is fixed. Everything else is open to possibility, right? And it's been so much time working with teams on challenging assumptions, but first you got to state what they are. And so let's get clear on what are we assuming is fixed, and then say, all right, if that's clear, all the rest of this is filled with possibility. And so I think really driving that clarity is important.
Fantastic. You know, Kevin, I want to go back to you for a moment. You know, we saw incredible challenges related to, you know, social justice and equity issues, along with the pandemic challenges. And I'm fascinated with how the Cavs and other teams have shown how sports can play a non-traditional role at moments like this. And you just had like a big announcement today, I believe, and you're one of the first movers in the basketball league, actually one of the first movers of all sports. Can you say a little bit about this and how some of these themes made that an obvious choice?
Yeah, Pete. And what I'd like to do first, I'm going to answer that directly, is to talk about the role that sports has identified that we can play in social justice from a broader standpoint, not just racial justice, but also how does it impact what we're dealing with right now. And in Cleveland, all three of our sports teams, the Browns, the Indians, and Cavs, have formed a structured alliance of which we have said we collectively can bring our assets and our resources together to help focus in the area of civic engagement and voting, as well as law enforcement and education. That's unheard of. There are times when teams have said, hey, let's do a food drive together, but we have a structured relationship that's P&G branded, if I can just throw that out there, that we are now driving issues from a sports standpoint. One of the things that had come up around really what are sports going to do, it was a question to us, is this a movement or just a moment? And for it to be a movement, you have to put sustainable types of processes in place to the announcement that you mentioned. When I took over a couple of years ago with leading our D&I team, one of the things that I realized is that we did not have real sustainable, authentic relationships with the communities in which we were trying to serve, such as the LGBTQ community, of which we basically were doing theme nights and trying to get them to buy tickets. So we had a Pride night, and we had changed our restrooms that night. We had changed the number of restrooms to all gender. Well, when Pride night was over, we took the sign down, and it was back to normal. Today, the announcement that we're making, and that's what you're referencing, is that we have permanently identified in our main concourse, when you walk in the building, all gender restrooms. And the reason why is because that is who we are. It's not just on theme nights in which we're going to do that. So staying true to who you are, making sure that you have authentic relationships, not transactional relationships, is how we have gone about this from a sports standpoint.
Fantastic. Bill, curious if you could add, your space, you've kind of gotten a lot of new experience in how you leverage digital and online. And I would suggest that as a digital pioneer myself, we're just in the early innings, the early quarter, if you will, of experiential marketing. How are you planning for all of these new waves of how we interact with products, how we leverage AR, VR? Are you on a new track to figure that out? Do you feel more prepared for it? Do you anticipate it?
Yeah, it's a daunting challenge. I would say we are, certainly doing our best, but never feel like we are doing enough. And, as much progress as we've made, we feel like we're still just getting started. But I give you a couple of examples in our category on some things that we're trying to do. And again, I would say everything that we're doing really comes back to this concept we've talked about a lot, and it's just in our DNA being, from P&G, is this idea of being rooted in what the customer needs. And in our case, in the case of jewelry is it's a visual category, right? It's all about what does it look like when it's on? How big is it? Well, I like the style, all of that kind of stuff. And it's also a category that that requires trust as the key currency to build customer relationships and get those purchases. So we have focused a lot on visual technology in our digital journey. So one of the other things that we did actually during COVID was we launched a visual search capability. So you could take either a picture from Pinterest or Instagram, or you could take a picture of somebody's ring, and you can if you go to our website, you can upload that picture and it'll bring back images of products that are similar or the same as that that particular item. We have I guess another capability we have started up, actually this was before COVID, but we have imaging technology that blows up a diamond 40 times with high definition quality, so you can see literally every imperfection in that diamond and know exactly what you're getting and what the quality is, where, in the past you were, kind of beholden to somebody else telling you what you were getting. Now, it really puts the customer more in a powerful position to feel like they're on equal footing. Lots of other things that we're
Yeah, no, it's a big area. I mean, even before the pandemic at Nestle, we put digital cameras in coffee fields so that Nespresso buyers could literally go straight to the source. And I feel like the learning curve is like magnified. Well, I wanted to give everybody a chance to kind of give a bit of a tweetable tweet final comment, because we're coming up against the rest, and we've had a fantastic session, but we're all P&G alums, of course. How do you feel what you've learned and experienced through your time at Procter help prepare you for the kind of leadership you're being called upon to provide today? And is there a piece of advice from your personal experience this past year that you'd offer everyone listening today? And again, tweetable tweet, because I know this, you could write a book about this, but give it to me in a short soundbite. Who wants to go first? Holly.
Yeah, I'll go, Pete. Yeah, and for me, I think it's really all about the people, right? I know hanging on every PVP poster inside of P&G, certainly since the beginning of my time there in 1996, was people are our most important asset. And I think if we can really kind of pay homage to that throughout our work together, I think the tweetable quote is I feel like this is also a quote from the Rapunzel movie, but it's find your humanity in this moment, right? And really embrace all that is and all that it can be and all the ways that it can build your business, your client's business, and end to end in that space. But it's find your humanity.
Fantastic. Kevin, P&G influence, tweetable tweet.
Yeah, so I came up under John Pepper, and it was when we had actually kind of introduced diversity as a business strategy. And the one thing that we also did, and this was beginning to really use process to drive results. And for me, I guess the tweetable tweet would be that continuous improvement allows innovation to actually take place and hold on, and it's sustainable. So continuous improvement allows innovation to be sustainable.
Fantastic. Tia Rochelle, what do you got for us?
I would say my tweetable tweet would be focus on your circle of influence, find the need, and serve with a spirit of excellence.
Outstanding. I can identify with that. Excellent. Mr. Bill, what do you got for us?
I'm not very good at tweeting, so I'll give it a crack here. But I would say,
give me your best diamond.
The good old fashioned PVPs and consumer as boss serves us even better in a VUCA world than it does in a non-VUCA world.
Well, I am so grateful for this session, as I'm sure all the attendees. And for those who, we are going to make this available, spread it. There's some great wisdom here, and I encourage everybody to have these conversations, because I do believe, kind of running a startup incubator, that there's never been a time where entrepreneurial skills have been put more to the test. And I really believe everyone is rising to the occasion, and we're turning these challenges, including diversity, and incredible opportunities, and anchored to core values and anchored to our consumer discipline. So I thank you all for the incredible inspiration. Keep doing what you do well. And Stuart, I will give you the final word to close this great discussion.
Well, thank you, Pete. Everybody who's left, I just want to let's show our appreciation for these folks for sharing the stories. If you want to click the raise your hand button, there's nothing like getting 100 or 200 people raising their hand all at once. Just say, oh, look at those hands. Wow. All right. Fantastic job. I really enjoyed it. And, I'm kind of blown away. We hit the business strategy today stuff, the circle of influence, focus on the important things. But, it didn't take these P&G alums long to get into the hold on to your values. And bring your team with you. Remember to say thank you. You could be someone else's rock. Wow. Which will lead into our next event. Hey, that's not a commercial, but about in 6 weeks, we should have something that'll just continue to extend this discussion. Watch your email for that. You got a survey coming up, and remember to send these invitations to your friends. Make sure they're on the Cincinnati chapter email list. And thanks, Pete, Bill, Kevin,
Andy.
Tia, and Holly.
Everybody, my panelists, say hi. I'm doing a screenshot. Okay,
All right.
awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the folks in the back.
Everyone.
Bye.
Greg,
Thanks,
thanks for all your help, dude. Bye-bye.